Starwars Droid panel. I'm going to moderator. Before the panel introduces themselves, as I was thinking about this, we've been part of this for quite a while. Like Mike, Michael, and William, I believe you've been members of the club for over 20 years. Is that right?
Yes. Maybe. Yes, correct.
And me and Chris are the babies. I'm like 19 years, and Chris is 18 years. So yeah, there's a lot of years behind us doing this, and we've all aged terribly.
And I'm still the best looking one on stage.
So let's go ahead and get to the introduction. So for each of the panelists, please introduce yourself. Let us know in those 20 years or so how many droids you've built and what you do in real life.
Hello everyone, my name is William Miyamoto. I'm from Wondercon, California. I'm an out-of-work actor, so until I make it big, I'm working across the street, but I can't talk about that. I built R2D2 back in 2010. Since then, BB-8, Mouse Droid, a whole list of other things that I started on but haven't finished yet, and Grogu. So, fun hobby.
My name is Michael McMaster. I live in Central California. I joined the group, the R2 Builders Club, in 2001. And to date, I've built about 43 different robots or droids.
My name is Chris Romine. I'm originally from Cypress, California, but I now live in Texas.
One in the back.
That's right.
He didn't bring his gun, don't worry.
I only come here to make these guys look good. I've built 2 droids, that one down there, and I've rebuilt a couple times, so we're going to count that as 4 droids, and a mouse droid. I've been a member since 2006 or 7. It's all a big blue.
The newbie.
The baby.
My name is Mike Senna. I work as a biometrics programmer. We do fingerprinting systems for a lot of law enforcement places. I also own my own company as an entertainment robotics provider. And
How long
What was
have you
it?
been doing it?
How long have you been doing
Oh, how many droids?
What do you do?
Oh, I've been doing this since like 2002.
How many droids have you
Oh,
built?
and how many droids? About 17.
17.
Overachievers, all.
Also, I should mention each one of these panelists has had at least one droid on one of the Star Wars streaming Disney Plus TV shows. So, in fact, William has been an actor on one of the shows.
So Victor also was on the upcoming Disney Plus series, Star Wars series. He was a droid assistant for Skeleton Crew.
And Mike was the droid supervisor for Skeleton Crew. So eventually we'll all get to see that show.
Yeah, William was a crime lord in The Mandalorian, so don't make direct eye contact. He's taking it to heart.
Right. Okay, so the topics we're going to cover today include, I'm going to give an overview of astromech.net, which is the homepage of the R2 Builders Club, and it also has resources for other droids besides R2D2. And I'll talk a little bit about blueprints real quick, and then we'll start turning it over to the panel for questions about how much you might expect to spend, what kinds of materials do we build these things out, how much do they cost roughly, and then things about electronics. What do we have to, know about electronics in order to make these things move and line up? And we'll also talk about the finishing work. Like, it's one thing to build it, it's another thing to make it look right and look good. So we'll touch on that as well. And we should have time for Q&A, especially because apparently the panel after ours is canceled. So if you guys have questions, we should be able to take those. Okay? So let me give you a quick overview of astromech.net. It's the homepage of the R2 Builders Club, and like I say, other robots in the Star Wars universe are covered there. And there's where you'll find the blueprints for these droids. So when people wonder, how did you know how big to make them? The blueprints are measured off of the real streaming droids, so they're very accurate. And also on astromech.net, you'll find forums for all sorts of topics. People ask questions on the forums, and you'll find all sorts of information. You'll find part runs on astromech.net, so most of the aluminum domes you see here were acquired because a member of the club has manufactured those stones and made them available to club members. So a lot of the aluminum parts, for example, come from the park rooms. But there's plenty of scratch building, and we'll talk about that too. And you'll also find frequently asked questions and tutorials and other resources. And just to give you a quick idea of the blueprints and 3D models, because we're going to talk about 3D printing also in this presentation. There's a couple of sets of blueprints. One was known as Club Spec Legacy, which is a little bit older set of blueprints, and they're pretty darn accurate, but Michael McMaster, I think, was involved in a visit where we got even more specific measurements from Lucasfilm Archives. I don't know if you want to speak to that for a second or not, but.
Well, in 2013, a couple builders who were working on updated blueprints had the opportunity to measure some of the droids that were actually in the archives. So they measured 3 droids and revised the blueprints based on those measurements.
Yeah, so they're very similar, but some of the parts are available in both formats, the legacy, and those are mostly for the people that started to build, and then the blueprints got updated, but they wanted to continue to build with the older blueprints. Those are still available. And then 3D prints, we have 3D models on astromech.net, and there's also a popular Facebook forum called Mr. Battery's Models for 3D printed droids. And we'll talk a little bit more about 3D printing as I say, but that's another great resource. I think there's another place called Droid Division. Mike, or whoever knows about Droid Division, maybe just mention where that's located. Is that on Facebook or somewhere else?
Yeah, it's mainly on Facebook. He's both Valley and Droid Division has a lot of really good custom droids as well as the legacy droids.
Yeah, and that little baby droid that Owen brought, I think was one of Mr. Gavin's designs.
So those sites are basically 3D printed models. You get the STLs, the files to print it, take it to your printer, and start
Lift him up
printing.
in the air so they can see.
What?
Lift him up in the air.
So this little guy is all 3D printed.
It's not painted yet, but it drives around, it turns its head. We have like 3 of them on display at our booth at the back of all these. Okay guys, so let's talk a little bit about what this hobby's going to set you back. What kind of sacrifice or will it lead to divorce, those kinds of things. So let's talk about an inexpensive build. Like what material would make it inexpensive and how much do you think you're going to spend if you're trying to do it on a limited budget?
Well, styrene is one of the less expensive materials and they're readily available. They have flat pack kits where basically you can cut the parts out yourself, form them, glue them together, and people have built droids for as little as $500 going that direction.
So if you don't,
We'll have a good one.
yeah, if you don't know what styrene is, that's just flat pieces of plastic that you cut the parts out of and glue together.
Well, how about your concrete tube?
And for my first R2, it cost me just under $600. It's remote controlled, sounds, lights. I used a concrete soda tube, which is just a cardboard tube, and started with that, so it's an inexpensive build. I'm kind of the budget builder of the group.
And so, is there a downside to using the more inexpensive materials like styrene?
Well, depending on what you're going to do with your droids, if you're going to come and do stuff like this or productions or anything like that, styrene is not really a good choice because it's so light and flimsy. If you're building one that's in your house, yeah, that's not a bad way to go. But if you're going to work with it, you're probably going to want something a little sturdier like wood. 3D prints, I guess, or I haven't made one yet, but I guess they're sturdy enough to do some stuff. But that's the only downfall I really have is the strength of the materials for work-related stuff.
Mike, I remember you once mentioned UV can be an issue as well with styrene if it's not like it's exposed to sun for too long.
Well, it's not a problem because a lot of people, well, you have to paint the styrene, and the paint is what's going to stop the UV from reaching the styrene. So that's not really an issue for that.
Okay. Moving on to what you might expect for a 3D printed droid. I know that in doing a little research, I've seen that it can be 25 to 31 kilogram rolls of filament, but there's also the printer involved too. Do you guys feel comfortable putting, I guess, what do you feel would be a good candidate for a 3D printed built, and like, would you say it's structural enough, and does it depend on the material? Like,
Well, I mean, you can build, I've built really large projects with 3D printing. With PLA, I built full-size Droid, rocket robots, and other things. The issue you have with it is durability and longevity. So the PLA, it's really unknown at this point how long it'll last. 15 years, 18 years, nobody really knows. And also some of the materials are susceptible, like PLA, you can't have it in a hot car. Some builders found out early on, they left them in hot cars over a weekend or overnight, and they came back to just a blob of jello.
Puddle in your car.
And they've got hundreds, if not thousands of hours involved in printing, assembling, sanding, painting. So there are materials, nylon, ABS, things like that, that are certainly more heat resistant, a little bit more tolerant. But yeah, it's a good budget material, and if you have a 3D printer, you can certainly print it over time. You don't need a huge printer. They're sliced, the models are sliced for different sizes, so you can use a small printer, big printer, anything in between. But you just have to be aware of the material's limitations.
And we're not saying you can't take like a steel, wood, aluminum droid like mine and do the bits and pieces in 3D printing, right? That's back when I built him, we didn't have 3D printers, we had resin runs. So somebody would make a mold, you'd send them money, they would send you resin pieces that you could put in your droid. Now you just 3D print them, the arms, the little greeblies on the side, the boosters. They're small enough to where it's not going to affect your droid, but you don't have to go out and spend money on resin. You just print it yourself. If something happens to it, print it all, get it all fixed up, put it back on your droid. So that's the good thing about 3D printers is you can adjust the bigger builds with smaller parts, and nobody will ever know.
most of the droids that have been built here in Southern California are hybrid builds of many materials, and Mike Seno is pretty much the first guy in Southern California to pioneer droid building around here. Mike, can you tell us a little bit about what materials you build with and maybe why, and the idea of like when you should use real aluminum versus maybe resin versus wood?
Now, I have the philosophy that you build with whatever you're comfortable with. So I was really comfortable with the wood. I liked plywood because if you made a mistake and drill on a hole, you can fill it back up and you can re-drill again. With something like aluminum, you drill it and tap it. You can't really fix that. So I went with plywood, and so I started building an R2 out of plywood legs, layered up, and then also a plywood frame on the inside. It was very strong and very, the materials were widely available. And so that's the approach that I took. And over the years, they really last a long time.
And how about like aluminum, like a dome versus a styrene painted dome, or details that, like if you're higher up on the droid versus lower down on the droid, but you can get away with?
And so the dome is like the face of R2, right? You want to get that right. So I kind of didn't want to do that myself. So the club has a lot of plans, and what they'll do is they'll go for a run of domes. Somebody will say, hey, I want to do 30 domes. Who's in? Who wants to buy some? So we'll get together and find the cheapest price for that, and we'll then announce it to the club. And the club specs and everything that we make for the club will fit on the other pieces that are made for the club. So you're guided in a way that you're not going to end up with something that's not going to fit, one thing or another thing. They're almost guaranteed to fit. So I like to go from the things that people can see and touch. Maybe I want aluminum and I want club spec built stuff that are really sturdy. And then as you go down, 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 where you can't really see a lot of the details, those are the ones that you can maybe get in resin and handmade stuff.
And you want to see a great example of what you can do with 3D? Lift up your purple boy there. This guy over here, Kerry, is like one of the godfathers of 3D printing with BB-8s. What's that thing called?
CC0.
What?
CC?
CC0. And it's a design he created and he 3D printed and he motorized and I want to say electronicized, but that's not even the word. But he developed that whole thing and it's gorgeous and you would never be able to tell it's a 3D print. So yeah, 3D prints have a place in droid building. It's just, you gotta make sure you're using the right material for the right droid.
I still think structurally you want to go with something more sturdy like plywood, because if you look at R2 up there on the board, he's attached by his shoulders up there. So what's driving him is the two bottom feet there. The leverage you're looking at is from the shoulder to the feet. Why did you change that? Thank you for my.
I forgot what I see is what they see.
Can you? What? No. I'm so sure.
I'm seeing the slides on my screen.
So,
Yeah, don't listen to that.
so from the shoulder top there to the bottom of the feet, maybe that's about 36 inches or so, but the leverage and the force that you're putting on the ankle is very high. So when you're talking about 3D printing or even fiberglassing, we've had some old school people try to do fiberglassing, and eventually they'll break at the ankle. So that's why I like a more sturdy material like either aluminum or plywood.
And just to go to show you how sturdy what Mike developed is, my legs and my crossmember bar that attach both my legs inside my droid have been in there since 2007. And I have not broken any. I've not stripped any screws out. I've had a little torque damage that we had to fix over the years, but that's an original leg system from 15, 16 years ago. So the wheel has been invented and he's cracked it, so it does work.
Revisiting 3D printing for a moment, what materials do you guys like to print with, and what printers do you like to use?
Come on, printer farm boy, what do you think?
How many do you like?
Call out. For really large parts, for the large builds, I use CR10s, which unfortunately are no longer made, but there are new printers that are coming out that are as large, if not larger. I've used PLA to print large parts and reinforce them with fiberglass on the inside. Currently, I like ASA, which is a similar material to ABS, and it's a very lightweight, very strong material. It's not sensitive to heat the way PLA is. And I have different machines that I use for that.
How many? Tell them how
I
many.
have about 9 different printers right now. Yeah. And I'd say ASA is my favorite. I've also used nylon. Nylon is a very strong material, as well as polycarbonate, which is probably the strongest material I've used to date. And it comes in a clear or colored material, so we've made lenses and different things out of polycarbonate. They're nearly indestructible, although we've tried to break them. And the probe droid there, that was all PLA. I wouldn't recommend making something that large out of PLA because we have to keep it in a climate-controlled environment. If it gets hot, again, it'll start to deform. And but yeah, we've used a little bit of everything. We use resin. Resin is good for really high detailed parts and is relatively strong as long as you don't smash it. You can't. Well, that's the problem with some of the resin parts. If you drop them, they shatter. And there are newer resins which are certainly stronger. That seems to be an ever-developing.
Yeah, getting better and better every year.
Yeah, every year it changes, new materials come out.
But I think currently, I think you'll agree, is the Bamboo X1 is like probably the top printer right now that you can buy. It's very fast, very beautiful, very reliable. It's got a camera on it that you can view it on your phone. You can see what your print is doing. It's a great printer.
Yeah, it's a
They
breakthrough.
call it Bamboo X1.
Didn't that probe droid end up being on TV?
Yeah, that probe droid was in Mandalorian, season 3, episode 7. It flies in and delivers a holographic message. From Moff Gideon,
It's not covered here, but I want to ask you guys, where is it worth splurging? Like, when's it okay to cheap out? And I'm talking about electronics too, like speed controllers, maybe transmitters. Where should you spend your money if you're going to get serious about, okay, this is something I shouldn't cheap out on?
I'm with Mike on dome. That's when you're in something like this, people want to touch your dome and they feel that aluminum dome. Huh? Oh, well, you can't touch it.
No, children here.
Don't. I said don't. But you know, you come in and people want to, you know, physically touch your droid, and when it feels like metal, you're pushing that. You know, I'm a real droid. I don't think you get that feeling with other materials. So I would say the droid, the electronics, and the speed, the drivetrain are my ones that I would recommend you're spending money on.
And definitely a reliable radio system
Yeah.
because you're controlling a 150-pound plus droid, and so safety's a concern.
I don't worry about that, I use the cheap stuff.
Yeah, Williams is the Wild West over here. Anything goes. But you know, if Grogu runs into your child, it's probably not as bad as one of these.
Why do you keep bringing up
This-
running into babies?
You know, this guy has a bad reputation. You know, explain this a little bit.
I ran over William's child one time.
T-shirts on.
One time. She was like 2.5 feet tall.
You can only run over her once.
Later on. She didn't even cry. But yet, 20 years later, I'm still catching.
So that brings up another question about safety.
What not to do.
One time. Let it go.
Actually, there's something to say.
No, 100% is radio system.
Yeah.
A lot of people will go through and build their droid. They'll spend a lot of time on their droid. They'll put in all the effort. They'll put in everything, and then they'll go on Amazon and go, yeah, I found this thing for $40 that will drive my droid. It's like you're gonna drive your $5,000 droid with a $40 radio system.
Williams.
The reason it's $40 is because it just isn't that reliable. So you do want to look at the system, look at how reliable it is, and really use that, because you are going to do your friend's wedding and you're going to be on a stage somewhere and you don't want it to drive off the stage.
Or there might be a child in front of it.
That too.
Yeah, you don't want that. You want a really good system. So and then you don't want to buy your radio system at the beginning of your build. You want to buy it at the end. So you'll have all the channels and everything to wire your system, because you don't know when you're going to finish your droid. Sometimes it takes
Or if.
5 years or 2 years. So you want to use the latest technology. You wait till the end to buy your radio systems, but don't cheap out on those.
I do agree that when I got called up for production to use one of my droids, I did change the radio system out so it was reliable.
Same here. Mike guilted me into buying this.
Yeah, guess what? Well, we're going to get into electronics a little more later. I was going to ask you what brand you use, but let's talk about that in a couple slides. And I meant to show, as we were talking about the materials, actually what they look like. So real quick, there's some plywood legs and a plywood frame. Mike designed both of those.
Both in that drawer right there.
And this is what a Skylane build might look like. And again, those it's super lightweight, super inexpensive. You can cut it with an X-Acto. So if you're on a frame budget, although it's very rare to find a styrene dome, there have been styrene domes made for the club before, but they're not in wide circulation, so you need to have storage for all of them. Okay, next topic, for scratch building. What tools might you need, and what skills using them might you need if you want to do a scratch build? Like, I can do this, I can make a droid out of wood, or at least the frame and the legs. What tools are in your toolbox?
Now Victor will deny all of this, but when Victor was building his droids, he had one of the best blogs on how to build a droid out of wood. I mean, everything he did, all the angles, all the parts that he made out of wood were awesome. I cheated. I bought resin. I didn't have the time. But the work he did and the way he documented it, you could do it if you had the right tool. So I don't know if he's gonna shake your head. Yeah, I did it.
Yeah, Victor vlogged his whole first build, so it's a good tutorial on like step-by-step what to do.
If anybody's actually interested, it's a blog at vfranco.blogspot.com. I'm sorry, I don't have it in writing anywhere, but if you actually want to see, it documents every day of building my droid and every event I've ever done with it. So it's really long.
Well, and it shows the ups and downs too.
And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
yes, all the things that went wrong, all the frustration, really, maybe they'll talk you out of it.
That and the pending divorce.
But we're using
Yeah,
basic
yeah.
hand tools, I mean saws and, jigsaws and table saws and drills and things like that. So you don't really need to spend a ton of money to build a droid.
So let me interject. How many of you have shed blood building your droid?
Come on, everybody that's built one.
How many of you have actually made yourself? Nobody, I hope.
Maine?
Yeah, like cut something off your body.
Oh, no, I said no.
Let's say that.
I glued this at the tip of my finger with the router incident, but
Thanks, you just
That's
jinxed
the
me.
rule. You can hurt yourself, but you cannot maim yourself. Don't do something if you don't know what you're doing or if it's not safe. And
or you're in a hurry or you're tired.
Yeah.
Don't do it, yeah.
Power team, we'll come back and get you.
anything else you guys would like to talk about?
Yeah, I built my guy using hand tools on the balcony of my apartment. I didn't have a garage at the time. I didn't have power tools. He's all garage built with hand tools. It can be done.
Out of curiosity, for those of you that might be thinking of building one day, how many of you guys do know how to use power tools safely in the audience?
This should
Safely, Brian, safely. Yeah, that's
I can say half the heads went down when you said that.
The rest of you are going to be missing a finger by about day 2. There's one.
Yeah,
There's
one in
one.
the back row.
Yeah. Is there anything else anybody wanted to add about using tools to build?
It just kind of depends on which droid you want to build and what you want to make it out of. What you bring to the table. I mean, R2s, all these basically up here are resin, metal, wood. But I mean, we have members that build R2s out of cardboard, connects, Legos. Yeah, so whatever you're comfortable building with, you can build it.
The Lego was hilarious. It had a bump in parts just fall off.
Yeah,
The
there
best
was a
story
guy
ever.
that did build his full-size droid from Legos, and I guess he didn't really glue them together. One put a wind on it. It didn't go well.
Yeah, we're a pretty heartless group. If something happens to your droid, you will get laughed at
Yeah.
and mocked.
Yep.
With
We smelled smoke today. And
I like.
yeah.
Well, it's like Victor was taking his droid home one day in his car,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the next day he comes in with this picture of his droid 90 degrees face down in
It
the
was
car.
180 degrees. It was upside down.
All because he stepped on his brake too fast and it didn't lock and the droid dirt
I
into.
forgot to strap it down.
And we had another guy, Roy, whose front foot was fiberglass, and due to torque and stress, snap, droid goes down.
Well, and that's another consideration too, vehicles, you have to decide how you're gonna transport your droid. Some people build mouse droids because they have a small car and kind of a good introductory droid, you might say. But there's some people, perhaps somebody up here who purchased a vehicle just to transport their droid. Look at you, Victor Franco. You wanna tell us how that came to be?
No.
And not only that, not only did he
Actually, we'll get to transportation coming up, so we can talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do it.
Okay, anything else about tools or anything like that?
Be safe.
Yeah, be safe. I mean, it really is easy to just get careless, especially with power saws. Those things are scary. So, and all of them, fan saws, table saws, routers, they need their respect. They can hurt you quick. Electronics. So you could just build a droid for show, but you probably want it to light up and maybe make noise and maybe even drive around with its head. We're going to get into a detail or some actual physical parts that Santa uses, but I just want to show a quick diagram of this one has everything with the lights and the dome kind of represented in R2. So you'll see things, the electronic for moving feet, moving the dome, receiving the signal, transmitting the signal, making sounds. But let me go ahead one slide and have Mike talk to the picture in the upper left, and hopefully you can see it like.
You can still see it. If you're going to buy a radio system from a hobby store, what you'll have is the transmitter that looks like this up in that picture. And on the very bottom, you'll see the little tiny receiver and a servo motor, and that's all you need to operate a car or a plane. The little servo motor will turn a little arm that will either be attached to the steering or the aileron, and you can do little movements with them. But in addition to that, to operate something as large as one of these robots, we need to get more power to the motors. So on the right-hand side of that diagram with that blue square, everything on that side of the blue square is what you would need to operate one of these bigger droids. So on the top of that, you'll see the battery system, and then onto the right of that, you'll see the motors, the typical motor that we use. Those are just the components, the basic components you'll need to operate something like this. But what I want to tell you is that blue piece right there, the speed controller, has markings on it that just says batteries, and then plus or minus, and then it'll have motor 1, motor 2, and all that does is plug into the receiver there. And once you wire those batteries to the speed controller and wire the motor to the speed controller and plug it into the receiver, you'll be able to drive your droid around.
Yeah, it does drive.
You know, and then you'll be able to do up and down and do this.
By the way, if that droid is saving droid,
This droid was in Kenobi. He was like in this episode 2. He's one of the featured backgrounds. But that doesn't matter. This the basic electronics, everybody's scared of that. Don't be scared of that. The basic electronics for any one of these guys is pretty straightforward, and will all be labeled.
Like there's a baby.
That's not my deal. Yeah, keep going.
So, William, can you talk a little bit about sounds and how to do them on a budget, maybe?
So with these droids, there's no one way to build them or electronics to use. An example of that is a sound system. You can get really expensive with the sound systems, paying $300 to $400. I chose not to do that, and
It's like the radio.
you can get simple wave triggers and MP3 triggers for about $50, $60. If you want to get knockoffs from China, you can get them for like $10, and they basically do the same thing. You trigger them, they play a sound off a memory card. Also, another way of doing it, you might have in your pocket right now, a smartphone. We have apps that have R2 sounds. So download the app, get a Bluetooth speaker, stick it in your Droid, and you got R2 sounds. So there's different ways of doing a lot of this stuff on the Droid, different ways.
So, you know what's funny though? We told this story before, but then I went out on the Kenobi, when I was working on Kenobi, the little Leia girl, Vivian was having her birthday during the production. So we decided to take, her favorite thing was all the droids, so we decided to take all the droids and present her with her birthday cake. So the prop master was like, I don't have any sounds in my droid, but I just put in this Bluetooth speaker, and I don't know what to do. So I went out on YouTube and it said R2D2 sounds, and we connected his Bluetooth, and I said, just press play every once in a while, and it just played the sounds through the droid, and he was like, oh my gosh. So we did that for that, and it worked out perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Another even more budget.
My first Droid, I have this in my kid's closet. It's a Star Wars trouble game. So every time you press the popper, so I just hooked up a little servo motor to this to activate it, and that's my sound system.
Yeah, me like a dummy went and spent $400 on a CF3 soundboard and he got that. $10.
There's different battery technologies that, actually, let me do a time check. Yeah, we still got 15 minutes. Batteries in the Droid, like, there's lightweight batteries, there's heavier batteries, there's some that, This is a lithium ion versus steel lead acid. Can you talk about what you use and why?
I've switched from lead acid to lipos, just because the weight, it'll light my droid up a lot and it's easier to transport. And I seem to get more life out of my batteries than using the lead acid. So I can go almost 2 days on one battery. And it's just so much better than my lead acid used to be.
No, lead acid's the best.
All right.
That's a man's battery.
That's manly. Okay, first of all, it is manly because you're lifting heavy things.
They're very heavy.
But then the second reason I think, or I think the main reason is when you're using LiPo or something on that tech side, the battery will last full voltage, but when it ends and it detects that's as low as it wants to go, it's going to cut off like that, so you'll completely die. With a lead acid battery, you're going to have the droid going. If it starts draining, it'll just slowly drain until the battery dies, but you don't care. You're not going to run it until it dies. But your droid will start to slow down. But you'll know that, and you'll at least have that warning sign, and you'll be able to go beyond the warning sign and keep driving your droid, which is kind of, if you're doing, again, public things or things that you on the professional side or even the non-professional side, if you're doing a friend's birthday or something, you'll know it's starting to slow down. You won't have that chance with the LiPo. It'll cut out and you're dead.
Or if you're like a mile away in a convention center.
Yeah, or in a convention center.
Well, yeah, but here you get more muscles pushing your droid than you do carrying the battery.
But there's also a safety concern, which you can kind of get on a little bit between lipos and sealed lead acid.
Get on it.
Get on it, man.
Well, sealed lead acid are very dependable. They're also relatively safe. You don't have issues with, explosions and fires and things. Some LiPo batteries, as you probably heard, can catch fire with you charging them. And we have a handful of builders who have actually lost droids to fires during charging.
Why did
And
We didn't lose a droid, we lost a laundry room.
You lost a laundry room.
You lost the laundry, it's just too
To a lipo?
So yeah, that's also true. I've seen complete sheds burn down from LiPo batteries.
That's what insurance is for. Next.
Well, next topic, drive systems. The motors we use to make the droids move. Three popular types of motors are the scooter motors, brush to DC motors, and the new ones, brushless. The model is 285 motors, which are like an e-bike type of motor. Talk about the advantages and disadvantages, maybe cost-wise, or the ability to push your droid versus not push your droid, versus power and maybe the speed controllers required to make these things work. Like, can you give us an idea budget-wise and also the advantages and disadvantages of these kinds of motors?
So when you talk about scooter motors, those are the budget version, and basically it's a kid's scooter. You just got the motors and you actually use the batteries out of it too, and put them in your droid. So that's a cheap way of doing it, like a racer scooter.
Yeah, most of these I think are brushed, gear reduced DC motors. Very reliable, very rugged, and relatively inexpensive. But then there are brushless motors, which
Hugely expensive.
are more expensive,
Yeah,
but they're more efficient.
Yeah,
the brush motors are what they use in wheelchairs.
My first droid, or his first system, was Saturn windshield wiper motors, like $7. I bought 3 of them, and they worked like a charm for years. I wanted to buy a second set just to have backup, couldn't find them anywhere, so I had to upgrade to the MPC wheelchair motors, and I'm glad I did. More power, more torque, much faster droid, but I ran for years on windshield wiper motors.
So as we go down that list, the scooter motors are called scooter motors, I guess, because they're on scooters, right? So when you're on a scooter, you can push it. If your battery dies, you can push it. You can freewheel it. So if you're going down a driveway, it's going to freewheel down, and you can turn it and be happy with it. With the other types of motors, they're geared motors, where if you are on a driveway, the motor isn't going to start turning because there's gears there that help provide some resistance. The downsides for the scooter motors is the upsides, I guess, are very fast, but you don't really need the speed. But picture yourself going down a driveway on a tricycle and then turning at the end of the driveway 90 degrees to go down the sidewalk. You're going to tip over and you're going to fall over. Picture yourself on a freewheeling R2 going downhill. You're going to have to backstick the thing to the point where you can make the turn. And that's a very, I guess, specific thing that you need to be used to and determine how heavy your droid is and how you're going to do that. Very, very risky, very sketchy maneuver. So that's why as Chris was saying, the wheelchair motors or the motors that are geared, you can very much control the speed going down a slope and then turning. Also going uphill, one motor may not have the same amount of power that the other one has. And if you're doing that with scooter motors, it's very difficult to go up a ramp to get to a stage. So that's another direction. The geared motors are very much more controllable in both up and down. So professionally on the side of an R2, I would never, ever, ever use a freewheeling scooter type motor. It would always have to be a geared motor, whether it's brushed or unbrushed. But the brushed motors are very much more efficient than the brushless are simply brushless.
Yeah. But one thing about the brushless is the speed controllers that you need to connect the motor to are pretty darn expensive.
Very expensive, very.
So they're very efficient, they're very power efficient, but the speed controllers are very expensive compared to a brushed motor.
But you'll see that in a lot of the electronics. If you go to Home Depot, you can buy a brushless leaf blower, and you can buy a brushed leaf blower. The brushless is always going to be more expensive.
Anything else on others? Okay, keep moving because I know we're semi-short on time.
Oh, yeah.
Finishing work. So you want to make the droid look good, and I don't know if the audience is ever trying to make something wrong, like stupid pretty and detailed. If you have, we'll get in that here. Talk about building, sanding, and painting, and the steps involved.
I get it.
Well, you get the guys that do these pristine paint jobs on their droids. Like Victor, he has one droid that is clean and pristine, but after 16 or 17 years, you bump into stuff. I have a cat that likes to sit on top and fall off and scratch my paint. And at some point,
Nature's weathering.
it's character. And at some point, is it worth repainting or just like the way it is?
Well, that's the nice thing about the Star Wars universe. Everything's beat up, right? Everything's used. It's a used universe, so we don't necessarily have to have pristine paint jobs, and you can add a little weathering, and over time you'll certainly add weathering naturally.
Yeah.
But some people, certain people, do like a pristine droid.
I eventually weathered it.
It's only a 20-year droid, he'll eventually weather.
I would say though, you can easily underestimate how much time this will take. It can take a good long time to fill sand and then paint and weather.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's never done.
Well,
Never
and 3D prints. 3D prints
Yeah.
are notorious because you have print lines, so you have to get rid of the print lines, and you're constantly grinding, sanding, just over and over and over again until you get as smooth as you're happy with before you put paint on it. So yeah, if you go the 3D printing route, expect to do lots and lots of sanding.
Yeah, all these kits are just big models that you have to finish, and there's lots of sanding and smoothing out, and if you want it to look nice, you gotta do a lot of it. If you don't care, just throw some paint on it.
And by kit, you're referring to the 3D print. Plan.
Well, anything.
So the R2s are not kits, but yeah.
Lots of model kits. It's just a model that you put together, and you gotta finish it.
So after you've spent a fortune building the droid, you get to spend potentially another fortune figuring out how you're going to get it from place to place. Real quickly, guys, what vehicle do you use to transport your droids? Starting with William.
I got a van, Sienna van.
I squeezed mine into the back of the Jeep.
Yeah, I'm a FJ Cruiser.
Sienna Van.
Or Sienna, I mean Seth.
And as alluded to earlier, I ended up having to buy my droid a Honda Element. So,
It has its own car.
yeah, my droid has its own.
I bought a car for me that my droid fits in. He bought a car for his droid that he fits in.
Exactly.
And then he put a motor in it to help pick up his droid so he could single man load his droids.
Actually, when I was shopping around for my wife's car, it was a consideration if a droid would fit in or not, so.
Another thing is you can plan on buying things multiple times or going to the hardware store and returning stuff and buying it again and all that stuff. But there will be maintenance. You will have to either upgrade things, fix things. I don't know if you guys want to speak to that or, again, we're short on time, but if you have something you want to say.
Yeah, it's not a con unless you're in your droid fixing something. Well, for me, I don't know about the rest of you.
And beware, this can be a habit. That's a picture I believe of John Boyd's garage in San Diego. And many reporters have seen it, and that's just part of what people. So I guess you've heard how many what these guys have built. So
You must have a strong marriage and a large credit limit on your credit.
So, as for where you can find help, of course, I already mentioned astromech.net, but there's all sorts of resources and but maybe in your community, I assume most of you, if not all of you, are here in Southern California. So we have a close-knit group that Mike has helped establish. Even Mike does occasional build days, so that's really helpful.
Well, depending on what you want to build, like he shows an RX droid there, so depending on whether you like GOG droids or NUS droids or C-3POs, they're guaranteed as a group for that.
And they're all helpful.
Yeah.
I've never had anybody come to me and say, I can't help you.
These groups are the most supportive people you'll ever meet, and if you don't have a skill, don't worry, you'll learn it.
Yep.
There are people that will help you and walk you through it.
Yep.
Yep, and you make great friendships.
Yep.
Well, let's not get let's not go.
All walks of life.
Yeah.
Chris puts up with it.
Chris is wearing a piece of one of my robots, so there's
I can't
a little
tell that.
animosity. Years ago, my Wally had a bearing that scattered. He picked up the pieces, thinking that he was being helpful. Next thing I know, he's built a ring out of my Wally.
Wally's only been in one movie, Archie's have been in 9. All right?
And then resources for all the Star Wars droids. If you want to see a list of not just astromech.net, but other droids, here we go. So you can see R2D2, BGA, the Rex droids, the mouse droids, even Wally. Sorry, Chris. Those are the websites, and then there's a whole bunch of Facebook groups. So technically we are almost out of time, but I will. To the back of the room, are we allowed to run a little long? Or, okay, we got thumbs up and thumbs down. Some of you guys may have other better panels to go to.
No, they don't.
In fact, these guys might want to. But if you guys have questions, let's go ahead and take
Just so you know, a little pink and blue haired girl back there, very well.
Yeah,
I ran over with my droid. She's alive.
They broke it out.
She walks with a limp now.
They watch cameras in the back of the room with the colored
Rules a little bit.
Yeah, so question over there.
She forgets her name every now and then, but she's okay.
Fine, we got a question.
All right.
What is the droid function that has not been done, or really tough build? Something that you guys say, man, I wish that people would do it, bring it to convention.
So the question is, what is a droid function, something that's really tricky to do that we would like to see done and shown off at the conventions?
For years, we joked about R2 walking upstairs.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that, but
Take mine too. That's my, go ahead, take
Well, I'll ask you if they can fly.
Yeah,
Maybe
fly.
Answer that one.
yeah.
No, I don't know if you want to put fire next to wooden legs, but
Anybody else?
Take it? No, it's all yours.
So everybody asks if we can make a droid that walks up the stairs. And the answer is no, we can't make a droid that walks up the stairs, but we do make droids that go down the stairs. But they only do it once. That's my joke. Thank you.
It's amazing what the when you visit our booth, just in droids, the panels are popping open, gadgets are coming out, it's really amazing. Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
How often do you guys watch Star Wars?
How often do you watch Star Wars?
I've never seen it.
I don't know what that. Star Trek?
We experience Star Wars on a daily basis.
We live it, yeah.
I like watching the streaming shows a lot. I've seen the movies, probably hundreds of times, so.
Yeah, you do.
Yes, question.
Not a specific people question.
Yes, you can.
How many
The question is, how many 3D printing droids is Michael?
So the Probe Droid, Roddy the Robot, and Maximilian from Black Hole made a 1-1, and we're currently working on a bomb from the Black Hole.
Because he's got nothing else to do with them.
Yeah. That's what we do.
Running in your farm,
Yeah.
harvest oranges. See, they got it. They got it.
They got it. The front row.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Are any of you messing around with like AI or machine learning to like make your droids kind of do things without you having to control it?
The question is, are any of us using AI or machine learning to control the droids instead of having us have to do it manually?
Well, I've already run over one child not being AI. So having a 150-pound robot that might accidentally run over another one is not high on my priority. So it's a safety thing. We've had guys that have tried it. It's just, I want my thumbs on these to make sure I don't hurt anybody, because I don't care if you're a 2-year-old baby or a 30-year-old man. I hit you with a 150-pound metal droid, you're gonna feel it. So I don't know too many folks that are working. I know they have some functions that are AI, but the actual remote, the movie, no, it's just too risky.
I think generally we're doing things that are replicas of things that were in movies, and I don't think anybody would really develop a 3-legged robot that did a lot of good stuff or useful stuff in the real world, and being the weight that it is, it doesn't really lend itself well to being controlled outside of manual control, like automatic control.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not the robotics club to be doing that. I'm sure there are other clubs that are much more
Cyber, what is it?
geared towards doing that kind of stuff.
And my perfect robot is 4-wheeled machine guns and flamethrowers, but they won't let me build it.
See, a couple questions first, we'll do this, and
Do you know anyone who's come up with a system that follows them around automatically, like a tracking beacon kind of thing?
actually, I do know somebody.
Yeah, I've heard of
It
one
was
guy.
Rob.
Yeah.
What's Rob's last name in Arizona? So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, they usually just do it in their house and not in public, so again, you don't have a problem. But in case you can hear the question was, do you know of anybody who's developed a system where the droid can follow you?
Like the luggage, I like that.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of irritating,
Yeah, he won't leave you alone, he won't stop talking. Like an ex-wife. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Nick,
It's become an intervention for Chris Roman.
Question from Princess Leia. Have we ever burnt through broken a 3D printer, like it's working so hard that it died?
I've worn a couple out. Yeah, I have thousands of hours on my CR10s, and I'm constantly rebuilding them because they're, they have a finite life.
my filament snapped the other day. I had to reload it.
Zero compassion.
Yeah, actually, one of mine is doing right now. I have to replace one of the stepper motors, and of course, there's always a routine maintenance like clearing the nozzles and stuff that I have to do.
I had to fill up my resin tray once. That's tough, man. 3D printer, too, technology.
Any other questions before we wrap? Okay, next.
Victor,
Oh, wait,
back, come on.
I'm a terrible moderator, sorry, yes.
Do most of you guys do your own finishing painting, or do you outsource that to artists? Like, what kind of recommendations do you
Great
have?
question. Do we do our own finishing and painting, or do we outsource?
Well, we've had some guy powder coat and then do professional auto clear on it and stuff like that. You know, you have to have the right materials and booth and stuff to do that. But most of the guys I know, it's rattle can.
So, the club members have all done that. I know Mike and I both built droids that production has painted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a droid that Mike was driving
I
earlier.
think this is an example, or no?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, this one has been, I keep forgetting I have a droid. Here he goes again. So this droid was painted by Bethany Barton, which was the prompt assistant for Keneally Lemon. They requested, I guess, the director requested a graffiti in order for this inner city environment. So she painted this droid out for.
We mostly paint on these, there's an exception to the rule.
Yeah, this is really.
Yeah, powder coating is one, so I think one of the nice things about powder coating is it's really tough, but one of the downsides is if you chip it or something, it's hard to match again.
Just like Princess Leia did.
Okay, you guys are watching for me. Any more questions? Well, if there's no more questions, I'd like to thank you very much for attending our panel. We have a booth of the back of and we did about 20 or 30 droids. Not just these, but there's like all sorts of different kinds of PDA and a bunch of mouse droids and a couple of lollies. So yeah.
Yeah, so come down and see us.
Good job, guys.
Yeah.